Hey guys, thank you for joining me for another video. Today I'm going to be going over the eight books I read in July. As always, I'm going to be starting on the bottom with my least favorite, working up to my favorite, as I tend to do with these videos. Disclaimer, just because I didn't enjoy some of these, I'm not saying you won't, not saying you shouldn't read it, not saying the book's bad or the author's bad, yada, yada, yada. I like to say that because I feel bad when I start kind of criticizing. I never want to put someone off a book. Also, one of these books is pretty beloved and I didn't have a great time with it, so don't take it personally. Without any further ado, let's get into the actual books I read. So this is going to be starting off at the bottom, number 8, unfortunately, and that is Severance by Ling Ma. Now, I went into this book pretty much knowing nothing about it, and that's kind of how I wanted to start it. It's a very empty cover. It can be about anything. Unfortunately, I made the mistake when I went on Goodreads, just to keep track of the books I read and to click like, hey, I'm reading this book now. I must have seen something, some sort of comment that mentioned an apocalypse. I wish I had not read that because that gives me some sort of preconceived notions that were very, very wrong. This is not at all a novel about the end of the world. Funnily enough, I will say, kind of creepy, this book was written like a year or two before COVID started, but it is about a virus that originates in China, spreads to the rest of the world. It's called the Shen fever, and it kind of has disastrous results. So that was strange. Anyway, main character is Candice Chen. She emigrated from China when she was very young with her parents. We deal, I would say 70 to 80% of the book is in the past. So we're dealing with her family, her relationships, her job. She works at some production company that sells Bibles, breaking up with her boyfriend, her life in New York, etc. Only 20 to 30% of the book, I would say, is actually set when the Shen fever is an issue. After the Shen fever does begin, she falls in with a small group of survivors whose kind of evil cult leader named Bob does bad things for no apparent reason, really. Okay, so there's a few reasons I really struggled with this book. Number 1 on the list, it was incredibly boring for a book that's about correction, it's not about the destruction of the world, and I should stop thinking of it in those terms. This Shen fever kind of turns people into a sort of zombie where they do certain types of actions over and over and over compulsively until they die. And I know that the author's trying to say a lot about kind of consumerism and manufacturing and a lot of important topics, but the way she goes about doing it, it's such a boring, for me personally, it was so boring. It was very dry, it was very dull. The main character just kind of felt like a robot. She didn't seem to have many feelings or emotions about anything. What was going on in the world wasn't interesting. She hated her job, she was bored at her job. There was just nothing. Like, the evil Bob was kind of evil for no apparent reason. Her group of survivors, they can all be like interchanged with each other. No one had a distinct personality, and I really like distinct personalities in my book. Again, there is a lot she is trying to say, and I totally support a lot of the subjects that she's trying to get across. It just wasn't a very effective way for me to engage with those subjects. The book just felt pretty one-dimensional, unfortunately. Next on the list, this was kind of a tie. This and Severance was kind of a tie, and that's Neon Gods by Katie Robert. All right, first things first, to be fair, I have said it before, I'm gonna say it again, I typically do not go for straight romance books. They have to be mixed with something. The romance has to be just a part of it. This is mostly romance, so automatically some of the tropes in this book I'm just not going to be predispositioned towards. Okay? Now, some of the issues I had with this book. It is supposedly a Hades and Persephone's retelling. I would define it as such only in the loosest term imaginable. There are characters named Hades and Persephone and Zeus and Apollo. It's not clear if they have any sort of supernatural abilities. The power structure is the same, the names are the same, but that's pretty much it. There's a river Styx, that's there too, but it feels more like a mob romance almost than anything supernatural. Persephone is living in the city with all the other gods, and surprise, surprise, she's at a party one night and Zeus announces that they are engaged. Now, Zeus is not the greatest guy because he's already gone through 2 wives and they've met less than savory fates. And pretty much everyone knows that he's killing them, but he's the most powerful god there, so no one really says anything. She pretty much realizes that this is a death sentence and she runs away. She makes it across the other side of town. Again, there's this river Styx that once you cross it, that's said to be Hades territory. Nobody's seen Hades in so long. She's got some henchmen following her, chasing her. She crosses it. Surprise, Hades is real and he's there to rescue her. And okay, I didn't like the romance here. I'm more of like a slow burn type of person, go from like enemies to friends to lovers. Hades becomes obsessed with her in like 20 minutes. Because she had to run out of the city, supposedly she like messed up her feet, and all he can think about for like the first 24 hours of them meeting is like, oh, her feet are hurt. She can't walk. I must carry her. I want to bind her feet. And he mentions it like 50 times in like 20 pages. He's just Persephone is kind of this Bella Swan where he becomes obsessed with her and we don't really know why. She's not a terrible character, but she's not particularly anything. And I think probably the biggest issue I had with the book is the atmosphere doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. So it's set, I'm guessing, in our world because it mentions Star Wars and Florida and I think Ohio or something like that. But it's supposed to take place in this world where all the gods exist. And anytime it mentions something modern like taxis or cell phones, it just kind of takes me out of any type of like mythological world I'm trying to imagine. I don't tend to like myths kind of retold in our world. Like if it's gonna be a myth, I want a whole new world with like magic forests and stuff. So yeah, this was not for me. I do have a friend who wants to read it, so I'm gonna give it to her and maybe she'll love it. Next book, I'm going to try and be a little more concise because I kind of droned on about the last 2. This is Saint X by Alexis Shakton. I'm not sure how you pronounce her last name. So this is a thriller about a family that goes on vacation to an island called Saint X. I believe it's in the Bahamas. On the last night at the resort, the eldest daughter, Allison, goes missing. Days later, her body is found, but no one knows what happened. No one knows if it was an accident or if someone killed her. We follow her younger sister, Claire, like 10 or 15 years later. She's living in New York, and she suddenly, kind of without cause, without provocation, becomes obsessed with her sister's disappearance, possible murder. One day she's taking a taxi and the man who is driving she recognizes as one of the suspects in her sister's murder. There were 2 boys at the time that I guess her sister was kind of hanging out with. They were both interviewed. They were found not guilty though, but she decides to kind of creepily befriend him in a very odd, strange way to see if she can get some sort of information out of him eventually. I will say the writing was pretty good, but overall the book just felt a little bit pointless. The ending was very anticlimactic. I didn't like any of the characters. There was no real mystery. Yeah, it wasn't really for me. If you're looking for a novel about one sister disappearing and the other trying to find out what happened to her, I would suggest Sadie. Next book is the one that I gave that little warning for because it is sort of Destiny Tales from the Witcher. I wanted to like this book way more than I did. I've read the other collection of short stories from The Witcher. This is the second one, and then I'm going to be getting into the actual series. Before I get into some of the things I didn't like, let's get into the things I did like. I mentioned it, I think, before on the last Witcher book. I like that it's a fantasy that doesn't take itself too seriously. It feels like it's a different sort of fantasy when you're reading it. I really like the conversation and the dialogue in it. I like the magic in it. I like the character of Geralt. I really like Ciri a lot. I like that there's a lot of mythologies from different countries. So the monsters, the world itself, that's all good. The Witchers themselves, fascinating. I love it. Where this book lost me, let's just jump in. The amount of male gaze in this book was just so annoying and unnecessary. I can't describe what a single male character looked like, but I can describe the breasts of every female character because he mentions the breasts of every female character. The character of Yennefer is supposed to be like this really powerful sorceress, but in this book, in the one battle she kind of like relies on Geralt for everything, she ends up being like kidnapped and bound by a group of dwarves who grope her and then threaten to rape her, and Dandelion thinks it's like the funniest thing ever. There's a whole story about two men fighting over her. I just like, give me the girl power. Like, I want to see her like blasting people away or doing incredible feats of magic. Like, don't tell me she's this incredibly powerful character and then just have her be a victim like in every situation. I really want to like this series, guys. Please let me know if it gets better, because I want to like it. I really do. I like so many things about it, but again, the things I dislike just are really keeping me from enjoying it to the degree that I want to. So I don't know. Next book on the list is a thriller, and that is A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. This centers around our main character, Chloe. The book begins when she is about 12 years old, and her father is arrested as a serial killer for murdering 6 or 7 girls in their town. Chloe's actually the person responsible for the arrest because she did find a box of his trophies in the closet of their house. As an adult, Chloe is a psychiatrist. She's engaged. She's really close with her brother. Life is going pretty well. She's got a bit of lingering trauma, some PTSD from her childhood, but suddenly people start getting killed in eerily similar ways to how her father killed his victims. So the question arises, is her father really innocent? Did they arrest the wrong person? Or is this some sort of copycat? It did a great job of laying suspicion at several characters' feet. I will say about halfway through, maybe a little more than halfway through, it becomes fairly obvious who the main villain is. And at that point, it's just kind of waiting for it to be revealed. I did really enjoy it for the most part, though. The one thing that I wasn't crazy about is it did use that trope where it's like, can we trust the protagonist because they're drinking a lot and they're taking some pills? So did they really see what they thought they saw? Was it a hallucination? Were they dreaming? Sometimes that can just kind of feel lazy. It didn't in this book, but just kind of as a trope, I'm not crazy about that one. Overall, it was a solid mystery. Let's take a little bit of a 180 for our next pick, and that's number 3, Pax by Sarah Pennypacker. Pennypacker, yep. This is about a young boy and his pet fox who he saves as a kit. They live with the boy's father. The mother has passed away. One day, the father is called to war, so the boy has to go live with his grandfather, who does not want a fox underfoot. In a heartbreaking scene, they take the fox to the woods. They find his favorite toy. They throw it into the bushes. The fox is really excited because he loves the game of fetch. He goes to find the toy and they drive off and leave him there. And it's almost made me cry, I'm not gonna lie. Once the boy gets to his grandfather's house, he realizes he made a terrible mistake and he sets off back to his home on foot to find his fox. So it's about his journey to Pax and then Pax's journey to him. Pax is kind of experiencing forest life for the first time ever. He finds out, hey, I gotta, take care of my own food here. He meets a few other foxes. He has a fight. It's all good stuff. Number 2 on the list, White Oleander by Janet Fitch. I don't know what it is about me reading books regarding children and their murdering parents, but here's another one. This centers around a mother and daughter, Astrid and Ingrid. Ingrid's the mother. She is very emotional poet, kind of unhinged. And when her daughter's very young, she kills an ex-boyfriend and is sent to jail. So we follow her daughter, Astrid, as she kind of goes from foster house to foster house. Not great experiences for the most part. Her journey to adulthood, the very, very complicated relationship between the mother and the daughter. The writing in the book is absolutely gorgeous. It's poetic. It's kind of dreamy. It's a book where reading it is its own experience. So I really enjoyed it. I would suggest reading it. All right, guys, the book I enjoyed most in July, my number 1 choice. I'm so glad I rolled the dice and got this for my random book challenge, and that is Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. I put this book off for so long because I was really intimidated by it, and I'm glad I finally got to it because it is fantastic. It's kind of difficult to describe what this book is about. I feel like it would take like an hour, but I'm going to try and make an attempt and keep it concise. This is more like 6 kind of novellas that are all somehow connected, and we start in the past and we work our way into the future. At some point in time, the current story is broken and we move on to the next one. When we reach the end, way in the future, we stop and we turn around and then we kind of get the conclusion for each of the stories. We get a really nice mix of different writing styles and different genres with these 6 stories. We've got one that's set on a ship. We've got one that is about a woman trying to take down this corrupt corporation, one about an old man trying to escape from an old folks home. There's one about a futuristic clone, one about what the world is like after it reaches some sort of apocalyptic end. And then there's one about music and composition. Did I list all of them or am I missing any? But yeah, there's a lot of action and sci-fi and humor. The writing is really good. The characters are really interesting. I want to read more of David Mitchell's books. Luckily, I do have a few of them. Some books I just kind of struggle to put to words what I like so much about it. And I did just give a bunch of reasons, but the experience of reading this one is just something in itself. So don't be intimidated, guys. If this sounds interesting to you, give it a shot. You'll get right into the writing style. It's great. And those are the books that I read in July. Thank you guys again for joining me. I hope you did enjoy the video. I'm sure I will have another one up next week. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Read a nice book, and I'll see you next time.